Guys need to calm down some. Don't get all excited. Let's go away to rest. And so he takes them to rest, and they get interrupted by the crowd who want to follow him to hear the teaching. And now suggests is one of the worst things that happens in Jesus' ministry. He starts to feed the 5,000 with the 2 fish and the 5 loaves of bread, and everybody missed the purpose of the miracle. It is in several places. It picks up in John chapter 6, and it picks up in Matthew chapter 14, because Mark is quoting from Peter. Peter doesn't give the story here in Mark about him going off the ship and walking on the water, because he's not going to talk about himself. So he only talks about all the other things that are involved in terms of getting this together. But they go to feed the 5,000. You know the story. They sit down all in a row, and they feed the 5,000. It is John who suggests to us that they wanted to make him king. And they were grabbing him. Just think, anybody that opens a supermarket in the desert, it's time to make him king. But what happens in the midst is that Jesus did the miracle because of necessity, but everything he did serves a purpose. Don't ever look at what happens around you in the natural. Try to find some spiritual purpose in what was done. John 6 tells us that they got caught up into making him king, so much so that the disciples did the same thing. Let's make him king. Let's make him king. Well, it becomes interesting because in Mark 6 it says what he did immediately, he did 2 things. When they missed the purpose of the miracle, he dismissed the crowd, and he forces the disciples to get in the boat. Now the King James says he constrained them to get in the boat. The actual Greek says he shoved them. In other words, you missed it. They're trying to make him king. You didn't see the glory of God. Get in the boat. Andrew, you missed it. Get in the boat. Peter, I don't know what's going on, but get in the boat. John, get in the boat. He constrained them to get in the boat. He dismisses the crowd. He goes to the mountain to pray and told them to meet him on the other side. Now, I'm going to show you how bad the disciples knew that they had messed up. They didn't even have the common sense to ask, how are you going to get on the other side? He puts them in the boat and tells them to go to the other side while he goes to the mountain and pray. And the reason why Jesus goes to the mountain and pray, you have to understand this solitude time with any minister of God who really stands and gets in the word, is that sometimes when you know people have missed what you're trying to deliver and they don't really get it, you need to go back and see God. God, did you really mean for me to do that? Did you really mean for this to happen like this? I didn't just mean to feed hungry bellies. I wanted them to see the glory of the Father. Because if they see me and see the Father in me, that's the purpose of the miracle. It's not so that you can get your belly filled, but you can see the power and the majesty of God in your life. They missed it. Everybody got caught up in the glamour. Let's make him king. God was going to give him his elevation in his time. You can't let people push you where God's not pulling you. Problem is people try to pushing you in your destiny, and you listen to the voices trying to push you. You ought to be this. You ought to do this. You ought to have that. No, if God's not pulling you, don't let people. Problem with a lot of people is they've been pushed in the way they are. They've been pushed into appointments, pushed into titles, pushed into things that God has never pulled them into. Are you listening to me? Well, let me get to the catch line here, because it's very important. Remember, they missed it. So they're on the ship. Here's a principle all leaders need to get. I don't care what God is saying to you. Don't ever go anywhere that he's not going with you. You know, I would suggest, Lord, now what you going to do? If you want us to go to the other side, where you going at? I'm not going unless you're going. And see, the struggle they had, because here's the problem when you go without the Lord, even though you hear a word from the Lord. They were struggling at the oars to get to the other side, to do what Jesus told them to do, but they couldn't. Now, isn't that a dilemma? To know that you got a word from God, but you can't accomplish what that word said. Becomes a tremendously oxymoron when you really look at the fact that I know God told me, but it's not working out like God told me. That's because you missed something in the process of God telling you. What has to do with things that God tells you is that what God tells you is timeless, and you have to begin to understand the timing of God. One of the things you need to understand is whether you're in the right place or not, because you need to be in what I call the geographical will of God. Sometimes God is placing you, and not necessarily physically, but you got to be in the right place before he gives you the right assignment. He tells Abraham, get out from among your kindreds, and I'm going to show you a place. And the reason that he really got Israel out of Egypt was not merely to rescue them out of bondage, but so they could worship. God is placing you in certain places so he can get worship out of you. And the reason why you have to understand why you go through problems and issues and you're suffering is because God knows if I don't squeeze you, you won't praise me. And all he wants is a praise from your lips. And he can't get it if you don't allow yourself to be squeezed. So let me get to the text. I'm through now. Here's the conclusion. What happened? For they had not understood the meaning of the loaves. So we got to go back to the loaves. What happened when he set all of them down? He set them down in companies, ordered worship. Because you got to get to the point. What you saw yesterday was called high church service because that was an ordered worship. There's sometimes we can have spontaneous worship, and then other times we need a ordered worship. If you really want to bring the presence of God down, you got to come in right order. Because order is important to God. Things have got to be in order. It's not about you, it's about him. Why you think all the chairs are facing this way? Because when we come into the house of God, we offer unto him the sacrifice of thanksgiving. We get our blessings on the way out. But while we're in this way, we face it because we're coming to bless him. And so 2A's become important in terms of worship. It is not only the atmosphere that's set, but it's your attitude. Your attitude has got to match the atmosphere, because if you don't have the right attitude, the atmosphere will not be released.